everybody. AK Moss here, and I'm joined by the wonderful EB Hunter. Hello, Eric.
Hello, how's it going?
Hi. Good. Hello from very rainy England to you over in Canada.
Yeah, Frosty over here. So,
Nice. Well, anybody who doesn't know Eric B. Hunter, he's actually the founder of the Fantasy and Sci-Fi Writers Alliance, which is totally awesome. If you're not a member of the Alliance and you're a fantasy or sci-fi writer, then totally check us out. Um,
Mhm.
Eric is also an urban fantasy, sci-fi, and horror writer extraordinaire. I've known Eric for a little while now, since joining Bookstagram, and I've been super excited to have a chat with you about, well, all sorts of things, really. And I really kicking off, like if anybody were to ask me who I consider to be a really prolific author, you would be really high up there on the list, because even just in the last couple of months you've been featured in another anthology. You're in a third as well, I believe. So what is it like, what is your secret to just keeping up your writing momentum?
Oh, geez. I think I'd heard a thing recently where you basically do a task in as much time you have to do it. So I just kind of set myself deadlines basically to make sure, I want to do this by this time and just kind of stick to it and make sure I do it. And then I have scheduled writing time a couple times a week. And I guess another thing too is if you only have that hour to write, at the end of the day, you just write as much as you possibly can. So just doing that and just if I get stuck on something, jump to another project or whatever, and making sure I'm getting a little bit of a word count every week is kind of it, and just snowball from there. But yeah, that's the biggest thing. Keep it between sometimes I get 600 words in a day. Sometimes I get 2,000. It all kind of depends, but yeah, just keeping that momentum up and just doing it, yeah, and following and making sure that I keep strict with my time and do it.
That does sound really structured,
Hmm.
actually. Like I really like the idea of having those, goals that you're setting yourselves, or like deadlines for things. So I think especially as indie authors, then we don't have a
Hmm.
publisher or an an agent or an editor
Yeah.
kind of over our shoulders going like, right, this is the deadline where you've got to get this particular draft or this particular re-edit done. And so actually setting
Hmm.
setting your own deadline sounds like a that's really good advice.
Yeah. Well, exactly. You don't have someone else doing it, so you got to make sure and do it for yourself. Like, I wrote my first book, Into the Gray. I think I wrote it in about 2.5 months, the first draft, and just I tried to do about 1,000 words a day, and just kept doing that and until it was done. I ended up adding like a whole bunch more after that when I was doing my redraft, but that's the way it goes when you're writing. So,
Yeah.
um, but no, just setting those goals and sticking to it is the biggest thing that helps me with that.
Nice. And those the couple of anthologies which I mentioned. One's called Beautiful Darkness, right? And the other one's called Haunt.
Hmm.
I think they're both only just out.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a bit
Hmm.
more about the stories that you've done which feature in those?
Yeah, so the first one that came out September 30th, that was Haunt, with Dragon Soul Press is the name of the press that put it out, and basically it's about a guy named Alex. He's kind of down on his luck, working the graveyard shift at a convenience store, and unwittingly makes a deal with a supernatural being, and things go sideways for him in a hurry. And that's basically the gist of it, without giving away the farm. That's basically what it's about. And then I've been reading that one since I've got a copy myself of it here, and it's got a lot of other great stories in it. But and then Beautiful Darkness, that one has two of my stories actually. Everglades, which is about kind of a similar theme where a mother, her child ends up getting injured during a home invasion, and she ends up making a deal that is ends up less than kind in her favor. And then the second story in there is called As You Wish, and that one is about a man who ends up getting possessed by a jinn or a genie, and just kind of the struggles of trying to get get that out of him. So, um, yeah, they're all kind of almost kind of similar in theme that I realized afterwards, where they're just, it has the supernatural comes into the story. It kind of like just messes things up and things go wrong.
One thing that I really enjoyed about Graveyard Shift is um, that you have, this kind of regular character. These are scenarios that we can all imagine ourselves in, right? And these
Mhm.
descriptions of, yeah, places or scenarios, situations, jobs, moods that we can all imagine ourselves in. And I think it's
Yeah,
really with Graveyard Shift, I was like, yeah, we've all been there. We've all been in a job that we're like, oh, this is really kind of sucks, or we might be a bit bored, or we're a bit
hmm,
maybe feeling a bit lonely, and
yeah,
maybe just about making ends meet.
yeah,
And so, we can imagine ourselves right in that situation, and then something really quite horrifying happens, really. And I got
yeah.
proper goosebumps when I was reading Graveyard Shift. I thought it's really, yeah, it's really amazing stuff. Um, is that something that you wanted to achieve with it, to get people going like, oh my god?
Yeah, kind. I never really even thought about it. I just kind of, honestly, I had sat down to do like, just to kind of change up my writing a bit. And like, normally I was writing in third person. I'm like, I want to do something in first person just for fun. And then, hammered that out and just that's kind of the how it went, I guess. And yeah, I mean, that's like you said, I just wanted to have something where it's like a very normal situation where you can definitely see yourself in that role as that person, like, and then once you kind of get into that where you're feeling like you could be that person, as soon as something bad happens, it's a lot more personal. Right? So
Yeah,
I guess, yeah, in a sense, yeah, getting that horror factor in there to creep people out a little.
nice. And when did your kind of interest in horror stories begin? Was it like a childhood love of like horror movies and stories, or was it kind of a new thing?
Oh, it's kind of, I guess it's kind of a new thing. And as far as like, I didn't typically read a whole lot of horror or anything, honestly, growing up. Kind of too much of a chicken, I think. So, um, once I was like, my wife really loves horror movies. So we've probably together watched like all of them, I would say, roughly all of them. So it's definitely something that kind of stemmed from that, and then even just like watching Supernatural and stuff like that. I big fan of that growing up, so it's always been kind of in there, and that's kind of how I thought of the story was actually like like a supernatural story of before the Winchesters show up. Like, this is the event that prompts them to show up in their '67 Chevy Impala and then go see what's going on.
Nice. I think you're very brave for watching horror movies. That's something that I find really difficult, even though, as you'll find when you read The Worthy, there are scenes of quite extreme violence, and scenes of horror as well, with the strange creature that infects people with its emotions.
Mhm,
But when it comes to watching kind of scary things, I'm okay with really sort of quite violent stuff.
mhm.
Okay with thrillers and some horrors, but if it comes to ghosts or possession in any
Yeah,
way, and I actually don't believe in ghosts. I don't think that they're real. But when I
yeah,
watch anything with ghosts in, I'm like, oh my God. And I have to sleep with my nightlight on. Like,
yeah.
I'm really useless. I'm 40 next year, and I'm still like, oh no, what if the ghost comes to get me?
Oh yeah, I know I get creeped out too, and maybe that's why it's nice to write it, because you're doing the creeping, not being the one who's creeped. So it's nice to have that change, I guess. Because yeah, I'll I had a dream the other night when my wife walked into the room. I swear to God, she was a dementor. Like, and and then kind of woke up like, oh God, and she's like, what's going on? So it's yeah, it gets me too.
Oh, brilliant. So I was having a read of your blog earlier, which I can really recommend anybody checks out. But there was a particular blog post which was about the iceberg effect, and I thought that was really interesting, and I was wondering if you might be able to tell people a little bit more about that and how you've applied it in your writing.
Yeah. So I feel like I've seen this kind of iceberg effect on so many writing blogs and even like the craft books and stuff that I've read. It's basically, having a world built and having all the details in your head, but not necessarily sharing them. It's a good way to avoid an info dump, which is um, uh, uh, everybody, especially in fantasy, you get into that point where you're describing something, you're just describing, and you get 20 pages of describing a table or something, and like Tolkien, and then all of a sudden, your reader's asleep or they went to go watch YouTube or something. Um, so that's kind of what I try and apply is like I have all this stuff in my head, I can see the scene clearly, but like you don't necessarily need to know what's in the back corner of the store where Alex works. Like we there's potato chips and stuff. We don't need to go into that, So you just work on what is immediately there, what's going to evoke some sort of emotion from somebody, and then anything else, let them fill it in. And actually, a lot of what I enjoy about Neil Gaiman's writing is that he kind of does that. Is he he gives you enough that you can imagine it, but he doesn't give you everything. So you can imagine it yourself, and he kind of treats the reader with the kind of like a respect that they can imagine it for themselves.
Mm.
Not necessarily he has to describe every single thing. If you leave it open like that, I feel like people fill in the gaps in a way that's more pleasing to them. So,
Yeah.
whereas if you are filling in every single detail, then they're going to be like, well, I didn't really like that, or I didn't like that. But if you leave it kind of, I guess, not vague, but like just enough detail to keep them interested and keep the story moving along and everything else, keep it in your mind for later, and just keep it underneath the water, as it were, with the iceberg effect.
100%, because yeah, that's really interesting, isn't it? Because certainly as readers that we do love to imagine and really immerse ourselves.
Hmm.
I find the idea really fascinating of like if myself and you were to read exactly the same book, exactly the same scene, and we
Hmm.
both had at our disposal an incredible 3D artist, character artist, or concept artist who was
Hmm.
then we were able to describe exactly how we saw it, how the light was,
Hmm.
um, what we would actually come up with. What would we then if we put those two
Yeah.
pictures side by side? How much of the beyond I don't know, there's a dark haired woman and
Hmm.
a Canadian guy with glasses and a goatee in
Yeah.
in in a pub chatting together. Let's say it's an old pub, but those could be absolutely vastly different things. What time of day is it? What music is playing? Like
Hmm.
who's kind of around them and stuff.
Hmm.
And I love imagining that kind of stuff, and then wondering how other people might have imagined it too.
Hmm.
And of course, it's a really effective way of not just going on and on and on.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Quite
because
real.
as soon as you do that, they're gonna get bored because as soon you got to keep the imagination going, right? And that's the best thing about having book clubs and groups and stuff like that, right? Is that you can talk about how you felt about it, and someone else can have a totally different feeling about something, and I mean, it's the same thing, but they might have, like you said, envisioned it differently or whatever, and it's great like that.
So yeah, I know you're a big fan of Neil Gaiman, and I'm intrigued as to how he's potentially influenced your writing.
Yeah, like I think I read my first Neil Gaiman book was American Gods, and that was way back in 2016. So I haven't been reading him, since childhood or anything like that. But no, I just really appreciate his style. And like I had said, with just the way that he goes about, explaining it, but not explaining it too much. So I do that to a degree where I'm trying to, not describe every single detail, every hair on somebody's head. And then another thing that he really does that I like is he just has like really great descriptions of things that like they might not make sense all the time. You know, you're reading it and you're going like, what does that mean? But you're not supposed to know what it means. You're just supposed to have a feeling about it, right? So you kind of feel it in your soul what he wants you to feel, versus necessarily overthinking it and being like, you know, well, what exactly does each thing mean? He just like puts it out there, and then you can kind of react to it the way that you want to react, or imagine it the way you want to imagine it, like where you're not getting yeah all the details, but it's just such a soulful feeling that you get out of it. And then a lot of, you know, he deals a lot with mythology and things like that, which I've always been really into. So yeah, all of that is just been, I guess, a big influence. So even the Alliance were having that short story contest, you know, about and the first prompt is gods versus humankind, and that's kind of, you know, he does a lot of that with his American gods, right? So it's well, old and new gods, and then there's mankind mixed in there too. So something that, yeah, it's just always in the background of my mind, that kind of stuff. So it's great.
Nice. Yeah, that's a good reminder
Hmm.
actually to those that may be watching who are sci-fi or fantasy writers. Then that's another thing we do in the Alliance is short story competitions, which are really fun. So good to kind of hone your writing practice. I think doing entering
Hmm.
yourselves into these kind of competitions. So
Yeah.
can you tell us a little bit more about the Fantasy and Sci-Fi Writers Alliance and what you're kind of hoping that it'll achieve for
Yeah.
us, the members?
Oh, hopefully so many things. I guess just kind of having a community is nice, just for the sake of having a community. But like just getting yourself out there, and just kind of getting some sort of traction on social media, and things like that. It's just so hard to do that. And when you're by yourself, it just sounds like it's like you're shouting into the void, right? And so when you have a community, you have, you know, a sounding board for things. It's just great to have that, and we have our Discord chat, which is usually pretty active, and you know, chats on Instagram and stuff. And like, hey, you know, I got this thing coming out, and people will share it, and it's nice like that. And then we've got all sorts of activities and things that we do. And we're kind of just growing, and more people are taking on roles and things like that. So yeah, it's just been really great, and I never in a million years thought it would have taken off as much as it has. Like, um, I mean, we started it in June, and we've already got 184 members. So it just, yeah, it just kind of took off, and people have really been responding to that just positive culture that we have, and just the support that we have for each other. And yeah, and we've got the not only the short story contest, which we just kind of jumped into last month, but we've got a reading roundtable where you can go and just kind of practice doing your live readings and things like that as part of your work. And I think people had a really fun time with that last month. We've got another one coming up, um, doing Twitter lifts and Instagram trains, and just kind of in general, just a low key way to contribute. And you know, there's no pressure for people like you have to do this or you're out of the alliance, you know. So it's just a nice way to, you know, have an online community where you can help out as much as you can,
Mm,
and you get that help in returns. So,
nice. Oh, we have an awesome book club as well.
and
So
the book club.
yeah, so people can
See,
submit.
there's so much stuff I don't even remember.
That's why you've
Yeah,
got me and Darcy and Lucy and the others to be able to help out, because otherwise, oh my goodness,
exactly.
that's a lot
Yeah,
of
the
work
book
for one
club.
guy.
Yeah. Yeah, because the book club, we pull, you know, from the authors in the group, we pull three books out every month, and if you're in the alliance, you can sign up to read it and give a review, and they just provide a PDF copy of it. You can, and it gets you some reviews, because as we know, reviews are worth like their weight in gold. So
Absolutely.
it's yeah, that's been really fun too, and it's been great to read. I'm actually reading right now The Assassin of Grins and Secrets by K.E.
Ooh,
Andrews from the group. And it's good. So I've been really enjoying it. So yeah, that's another really fun thing we do.
very cool. Well, my next question is a bit of a random one.
Okay.
And I know that not all writers have a preference. It'd be interesting to maybe hear from anybody who's watching this if they have a preference. But do you tend to write in third or first person?
Excellent question. I wrote pretty much only in third for a long time. Like my novels in third person, slightly leaning towards omniscient.
Mm.
But so that's something that I did for my novel, and then the follow up as well as I have like a novella thing kind of on the go. And then pretty much all of my short stories though have been in first person. So I find the horror stuff I've all done has been in first person because, like I said, you can kind of get people locked into where it feels like it's them.
Yeah.
So versus third person where it's a little bit more distant. You're panned back on the camera. You're not necessarily in that person's shoes. So I think that yeah, it kind of depends. And then I'm trying to do a sort of romance thing, and that's in first person because again, you want to kind of feel like you're the person who's doing the romance. So I think it kind of depends on what the story is, but yeah, I kind of flip between both and do whatever feels right for that
Nice.
story, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. Very cool. I found it quite difficult actually in the past writing in first person. Um, I think it'd be interesting if other fantasy authors find this, but certainly with kind of more epic fantasy stories,
Hmm.
sometimes it feels a bit like because there tends to be so much going on in
Hmm.
literally like a physically or geographically epic scale that it's quite difficult to do
Yeah.
something in first person because then you're restricting yourself to literally that room or that space that that person is in. Um,
Yeah.
and so doing third person, even if it's kind of close to third person, sort of enables a little bit more of a broader geography, or I've found anyway.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
and I think, yeah, stuff like romance and thrillers work really well in first person.
Yeah. Hmm. Yeah, I think you're right. It depends where you want that camera lens, right? Like
Yeah,
when the reader's looking, where like, do you want to be able to jump back and forth between locations? Because doing that in first person is a lot harder. I don't think Game of Thrones would have been nearly as successful if all 8 of his POVs were in first person, because it would have
yeah,
been like, who are we talking about here? But
yeah.
but I know I've found that well, one of the series I read lately, the Iron Druid Chronicles, which I seem to not be able to shut up about, by Kevin Kevin Hearn. He does it in first person, and the first I think 6 books and out of 9 are all just one person, and then he introduces a couple other people. So there's 3 by the end of it, but he did it, and it's a broad world, but it's really great. If you ever want an example of fantasy, it's urban fantasy in the first person. That's I think the only one I've ever really read that's in first person. Otherwise, like you said, it's
Oh,
all third person. So yeah, that's a good one if you're ever interested. But
interesting. Okay,
mhm.
nice. So what's
Yeah.
next? What's next for EB Hunter? What are you up to now? What's on your plate?
Oh, too
A lot, I'm
much, too
guessing.
much, too much. Right now I'm trying to finish editing my novel and get that done to the point where it's somewhat legible. And then I've got the second one is half done already, and then I've got a novella that's half finished. I got a lot of half finished stuff, but I've also, as I'm sure most authors can relate to, but I've got that romance short story that I'm going to be finishing up soon. And then I actually have a romance fantasy, urban fantasy that's set in 1930s LA that I'm going to try
Wow.
co-authoring with my friend MJ Law. She's from Australia, so it's interesting to coordinate time zones on that one. but but no, and then that's kind of what I've got on the go for the end of this year. Start doing that and just kind of keep typing away until the buttons fall off. So, um, and then just of course all the stuff with the alliance and everything too. So doing some contest judging for the short stories and that sort of thing. So I'm always busy. I got so much on the go.
Yeah.
That's the
Nice.
way I like it. So don't get me wrong, that's the way I like it. I like having lots of stuff going on because then you can change back and forth if you need to. So
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's a really good point actually. If you've got more than one project on the go, it can. I think it depends on how your brain works. I was talking with another author actually about this today, and they found it difficult because they were having ideas for the other thing and they kept on getting distracted and going over here, but they really wanted to finish this one. I think it's one of those that you have to kind of be a bit strict with yourself. Like, okay, I'm sat down, I've got an idea about this, I'm working on this. If something comes to
mm,
mind about the other thing, I'm just going to make a note, like a good note, so you can understand it.
yeah,
But just a note about that, and I kind of put it to one side, because otherwise it's so easy for you know
mm.
us creative, artistic types
Yeah, to bounce back and forth.
to get
Yeah,
to just
I
get
mean,
bloody distracted.
yeah, yeah. As long as I'm doing something, I'm happy. So that's kind of the thing. No moss on this stone, so I just
Oh,
keep rolling.
yes, indeed. Oh, cool. Well, thanks so much for answering my questions, and yeah, I
Hmm.
can't wait to see more of your writing and just continue to be part of the Alliance because it's a really great place to be.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's been fun chatting. I enjoyed it.
Cool.